Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Swim with Jim. This is Jim Ludwig, the founder of Main Street Financial Planning. And today on our interview show, we have with us Mary Brooks from Brooks Financial Planning in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Mary and I are longtime members of the Garrett Planning Network, which is the home of the hourly fee-only financial planners. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Jim.
We're glad to have you here today. Our topic is adult children need to have the, quote, talk, unquote, with elderly parents. So let's get right into our discussion, Mary. What signs should people look for, these adult children? What should they look for in their elderly parents?
Oh, Jim, that's all the things you don't want to see. You don't want to see them age. You don't want to see them fail in their health and in their daily living. But you're going to have to be vigilant and face the unhappy fact. I looked for things like messes. Maybe the mail wasn't getting addressed. Maybe the bed wasn't getting made, the dishes weren't being kept up with. Food in the refrigerator was not being, it was sitting, it had its own little colonies of stuff growing on it. Small kinds of things. You normally don't go and poke around in someone's refrigerator, but these are small things that you need to be aware of and start looking at. There's also the obvious thing, vision is failing. That typically now we have cataract surgery, so that is something that we have some relief from. Hearing loss. We all know that hearing diminishes, but at the same time, there is also a way in which hearing various sounds disappear from their ability to hear. So they may be hearing part of your message, but not all of it because their perceptions have diminished. The one that was hardest for me to recognize was the diminished sense of tactile. The thing that that brought it home to me was when my mother, who had lived to 103 and had essential tremor, obviously we had to get her out of the kitchen in a hurry. That wasn't hard to see, but with my mother-in-law, she didn't have that particular insult to her personal self. She was able to get around and do quite a few things, but all people, as we age, put on a rubber glove. You'll get the feel of how their world is working for them. Try and sew a button on with these gloves on and you will be quite frustrated. And then when you're looking at this from the safety standpoint, getting food out of an oven, have these gloves, put on this, try to use a hot pad. It isn't easy. This is a safety issue. And while you don't want to see it, you better look for it because otherwise someone's going to get burned. And we had a few close calls. So that one was high on my list of things to bring to your attention. Jim, that's where I'd start.
Well, listen, how do you suggest adult children broach the topic of handling your elderly parent or parents' financial affairs or at least assisting them? How do you suggest they go about doing that?
I think that the first thing you need to do is have a meeting of the minds of other family members. I happen to be an only child. My husband is an only child. The buck stopped with us. So we didn't have anyone as a backup to support or assist us. We also didn't have anybody to get into an argument with. But I would encourage you to begin the process by having a family meeting. It can be on the phone. It can, there are many ways to do it. I hate the idea of having this kind of a family conference at Thanksgiving or Christmas. That kind of spoils things for everybody. But I would have a game plan. I would have people engaged and involved. And then when you've figured out what needs to be done and what needs to be addressed, I'd have a list of priorities and an agreement with the family members as to where and how that was going to be addressed. And then you get to pick the lucky person who's going to be the most successful at approaching. And frankly, you're not going to be telling your senior anything they don't know. They're overwhelmed. They're frustrated. They see that stack of mail that needs to be addressed. They know their things aren't as they should be. They may have lost track of exactly where the checkbook is. They, I'm sure, are not dealing with anything online. Well, you may well be doing everything online. They're still writing checks and they're still putting them in the mail. So you're going to have to see if you can find their records and find their checkbook and find out where things stand. And it'll take a bit of doing. Your elder may not want to share. And a lot of times they don't want to share because they have less money than they have let on that they have. They don't want to be revealed. They may be embarrassed because they've lost some money that was a result of some bad choices. They don't want to reveal that either. Or it may be they just simply don't know. It's a tough kind of thing, but going in with the expectation of helping, I think, is always a plus. And the question of how can I help isn't necessarily because the answer is going to be, oh, I don't need any help. Not a problem. I tend to be very direct. I was also very lucky. My mother recognized that she needed help. And when you've got an essential tremor that won't let you hold a pencil to write your name, it's an easy sell. But you just simply, these people are not going to be surprised that they need a little help. And I may not like it, but you need to do that. And I always say, well, just in case something happens, I need to be in a position to take over and help you when you need it. I wouldn't necessarily identify today as the day, but straightforward, head on. This isn't news to your elder.
Mary, did you have any problems either in your practice of giving advice to others or in your own family situation, having the elderly parent execute a power of attorney so you can legally assist them in their financial affairs?
No. What we did is we put things in joint. As I say, my husband and I, being only children, there were no issues as to who should get their name put on things. We didn't have to go through the power of attorney thing just because we put names on everything in joint or POD or paid on death or transfer on death. So we kind of covered our bases and our situation was very simple. So we didn't have to have attorneys. They had a simple will. They had it done at the senior center. They had a service and folks came in as a community service and did simple wills and simple trust. Well, and not simple trust, but simple wills. Do not resuscitate. The various usual package of documents. And that was not a problem.
Well, how about some other stories on implementing that you would like to share? What went right? What went wrong?
Oh my. Oh, well, this weekend I got a call from gal who had all of a sudden, everything was supposed to be in place. She was an attorney and she had made sure everything was as it should be and in place and on and on. And she got a call and her father and stepmother were doing fine, hanging on. You can usually have two people hang on where one can't manage alone. Well, the wife ended up in the hospital. And the problem was placing of course, hospitalization is all of whole 3 days, and then you go to rehab. So now she has a father who has amputation because of diabetes. He's sitting at home. They got a little bit of cover from home health people, but we've got a big problem. Two people are going to end up going into some kind of facility, and it's going to happen soon. And the assurance and the arrangements that she had been assured were all in place, everything was fine and dandy. Well, it wasn't. So now, 1,000 miles away, packing up, getting up there to see what in the world she's going to be able to do. This is my little most recent war story. I don't have an ending for it yet because right now she's on the trip. But what I would share with you from that is you need to be doing things to take care of yourself, because this is tough. And what she was doing, and she and I were sharing, I was a backup for her to vent her frustration, to share her fears. You need to have a personal backup for yourself. You need to take care of yourself, because there are no happy answers in any of this. There may be the right answer that you hope is the right answer. There aren't even any assurances that the choices you're making are the best. You've never been down this road before. And so it's uncharted territory. You have to take care of yourself so that at least you can sleep well at night after you've done what it is that has been required of you. That would be one of the takeaways I have had over time. War stories. We had, with my mother, I was very fortunate. She was widowed when she was 68. She lived to 103. Over time, and we started early on cooperative decision making, because my father's death was very sudden. As a result, she and I just over time had to muddle through doing what needed to be done. So we never had the talk.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Mary. Well,
Yep.
hi, Mary, you're back.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to turn that one off. But anyway, I didn't really have the problem with my mother. She got a little balky about the idea of me taking over the checkbook. As they say, this essential tremor created a situation that couldn't be ignored. So I dodged the issues in where she was concerned toward the very end, and she had her wits about her until probably the last 18 months, and she absolutely was so offended at the idea of using a walker that she would park it in the middle of the room and then walk around it. Well, she tripped and cracked a couple ribs, and that was really when things started to become difficult. But by this time, I had my name on everything anyway. So that that was how that one worked out. With my mother-in-law, she had an older sister, and the older sister had her wits about her. My mother-in-law tended to be forgetful. And there was a third person in the mix of it, the widower of there were three sisters. My mother-in-law, her older sister was still living, and the middle sister who we had lost cancer. Her husband was very much a part of sharing their daily life experiences in this aging process. So when it came time to make decisions about what and where and how to manage a transition, we were going to move all three of them. That was another story. But what I would say there, what we did, we marshaled our troops. What we had was lots of help. We even had the ex-spouses come in and help us physically move things. The bigger the group, the more helping hands you have, the more quickly it happens, and there's less trauma. The faster you get that move out from A to B, that to me is once the decision's made, don't do it. So that one was an interesting transition. And after we got moved, the aunt, the older sister, came after me one day. We were over there visiting and checking on things, and the aunt came after me and with fire in her eye. And I thought, oh my word, now what? And she said, "Why didn't you do this 5 years ago?" So yeah, I was a little nervous, but in many ways, what I'm trying to say is once you get past this hurdle of the decision-making process, in many ways it was sweet relief. It was done, it was over. They didn't have to worry about how they were going to take care of the house, how they were going to manage to do the various things that were associated with home care. When you're in assisted living, it's a lot more comfortable for them. There's a loss, but there's also a gain for them in the sense of comfort and community. One thing I would say, if you're looking at or trying to figure out where and how to make this transition to assisted living, I would not wait until it's necessary. I would do a little tour around the community. Well, not necessarily. Well, with my mother, I was looking and found a place that I liked for her 2 years. She went and looked at it with me, and we knew it at some point in time it was going to be necessary to make the transfer. So what we did is we put money on so she could be put on a waiting list. I think it was like $500. She was on a waiting list, and I will tell you, if it's a good place, they will have a waiting list. So you need to get started with that process. The money's not lost. It either applies to the first month's rent or it's returned if you don't choose to move into the facility. At least in Colorado Springs, that's how it works. You would get calls every 5 or 6 months. There's a vacancy. Is your mother ready to move? No, mother's not ready to move. And so we had this go on. Finally, mother tripped, fell on, cracked her ribs, called them up and said, I think mother's going to need your next vacancy. And she did. So part of your pre-planning and preparation, be proactive. And you can always get your money back. You haven't lost a thing. But I would encourage you to do that kind of preparation. I would also say, we thought aging in place was a great answer for the 3 folks that were living very close, geographically close to each other. And I will tell you, aging in place is just not a plan. It's an interim. So I would say that was our mistake in not being more proactive earlier in the picture.
Right. Well, Mary, your experiences are really valuable to share with our viewers and listeners. Here's my 3 takeaways. Having a trusted friend or family member to share your experiences and frustrations with helps reduce your stress as the adult child. Secondly, the more people that you can engage to help in those moves, the less everyone has to work, and the more it's a family and a friend affair, and get on a waiting list for those good places ahead of time. Those are 3 things that I hadn't focused on before, that even though I've done a webinar and blogs, that's why we interview you, and we really appreciate you being with us today. We've got to go now, but any final thoughts or words for our listeners?
I think you need to take a look at what your kids are observing as you're going through this process, because what you're teaching them, and it's probably subliminally right now, but your kids are learning how they're going to take care of you when that time comes. That's it.
Wow. That's a powerful one. Remember, you're a leader to the next generation. Well, Mary Brooks from Brooks Financial Planning in Colorado Springs, Colorado, we are happy to have you with us on Swim with Jim. This has been Jim Ludwig, the founder of Main Street Financial Planning, and we really appreciate you listening to us today on the topic of adult children needing to have the talk with their elderly parent or parents. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you.